The desert winds carried the smell of burnt stone, and silence hung heavy over the ruins of a once great city. Crumbled towers stretched into the horizon like broken fingers, reaching for a sky stained with ash. In the middle of that silence, a sound cut through the low rumble of engines. Human soldiers marched carefully through the shattered streets, their armored boots crunching against the dust of ancient walls. They had been sent to search for survivors, but in truth, none expected to find life here. The Varians had made sure of that. The Varians were not known for mercy. They left no stone urburned, no voice alive. For months, their war machines had carved through colonies and outposts, breaking worlds apart with fire and iron. Humanity had resisted, but the cost had been high. Every victory had left them bleeding. Every battle had taken something more than the last. Yet the humans refused to surrender, even when the galaxy called them reckless. Captain Rylan walked at the head of the patrol, his visor scanning for heat signatures. His men followed, restless and tired, eyes sharp with the memory of battles lost. They had heard rumors about this place, rumors of something the Varians had been hunting, something hidden among the ruins. Nobody knew what it was, nobody asked out loud. But each soldier felt the same unease as they passed beneath broken archways. And through the shadows of fallen statues, the silence broke again, not by engines this time, but by a sound softer, stranger. A whisper carried on the wind. Rylan stopped, raising a hand. His squad froze instantly. The whisper came again, thin but clear, like a child's voice. It was impossible. No one should have survived here. They followed the sound into a collapsed temple. The stone door lay cracked against the sand, and within, beams of sunlight cut across the dust, illuminating broken carvings on the walls. And there she stood, a girl. She was no older than 16, standing among the shadows in a suit of alien armor that seemed both elegant and alive. Her braided hair framed a face that was too calm for her age, too sharp for her innocence. Her eyes glowed faintly, like stars reflected in dark water. The soldiers raised their rifles instantly, fear snapping through them. Raylan held up his hand again, but his heart was already racing. The girl didn't move. She simply looked at them, and for a moment, it felt as though the weight of the ruined city pressed heavier upon their chests. Then she spoke, and her voice was steady, not broken. "You shouldn't have come here." Her words froze them more than the sight of her. There was no fear in her tone, no desperation. Only warning. One of the younger soldiers muttered under his breath, "She's one of them. She's with the Varians." His finger twitched near the trigger, but Rylan saw something different. Her armor wasn't Varian. It was older. The designs etched into its surface pulsed with light like veins of silver. And her face, there was no cruelty there, only sorrow. "Who are you?" Raylan asked, lowering his rifle just slightly. The girl's gaze flicked to him, and for the first time, her calm cracked. Her lips trembled before she whispered, "I am not what they think I am. But if they find me, everything ends." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. The words didn't make sense, and yet they carried a weight none of them could ignore. Before Rylan could ask more, the air outside shook with a violent roar. The ruins trembled as dust rained from the ceiling. Engines louder this time, heavy and metallic, approached. Varians. The patrol had been tracked. The girl's eyes widened, and for the first time fear showed. She stepped closer, voice sharp with urgency. "If you stay, you die. If you take me, they will never stop hunting but if you leave me." She hesitated, her voice breaking for the first time. The galaxy may never know the truth. Rylan looked into her eyes and felt something stir inside him. She wasn't lying. He didn't know how he knew, but he did. Whatever secret she carried, it was the reason the Varians had destroyed this place. And now she stood before him, not a soldier, not an enemy, but a girl lost in a war too large for her to bear alone. The ground shook harder. The soldiers outside shouted warnings. The Varian war machines were closing in fast. Raylan's choice had to be made now: leave her behind to be taken, or protect her and put his entire squad at risk. The girl's eyes burned with silent plea, but her voice stayed steady. Decide quickly, they are already here. And in that moment, Raylan realized the war he thought he understood was only the beginning of something far greater. The ruins shook as the sound of engines grew louder, rattling the broken stones around them. Dust poured from the cracks above, and the soldiers shifted uneasily, their rifles ready. Captain Raylan had only a heartbeat to decide, but his instincts screamed at him. He couldn't leave the girl here. Move her. He barked. 2 soldiers rushed forward, hesitating only for a moment, before guiding the girl out from the shadows. She did not resist, but her eyes never left Raylan. They were wide now, filled with fear, yet something deeper too, something she carried inside like a hidden fire. The squad hurried out of the temple, the girl in their midst. Outside, the desert. Horizon shimmered, but the view was broken by the dark shapes descending from the sky. Sleek, sharp Varian craft cut through the sunlight, their black hulls glinting with red markings. The soldiers cursed under their breath. They're here. One whispered. Raylan clenched his jaw. We fight only if we must. Keep moving. The squad sprinted across the crumbling street, boots pounding the sand. Behind them, the roar of engines turned into the shriek of weapons. A blast tore through a nearby wall, sending shards of stone flying. The girl stumbled, but one soldier caught her arm and pulled her forward. She did not thank him, only stared back at the sky as though every scream of metal struck her heart. They dove into the cover of a broken colonnade, breathing hard. The girl's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and low. They don't come for you, they come for me. If you take me with you, you will never escape. Raylan met her gaze. Then tell me why. Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a trembling voice, she whispered, because of what I am, because of what I hold inside me. My mother's power. The words left the soldiers stunned. Confusion flickered in their eyes, but there was no time for questions. Another blast shook the colonnade, sending a cloud of dust rolling over them. Captain, a soldier shouted. We won't hold out long. Raylan's mind raced. This girl, this stranger, was at the center of something larger than anything he had been told. And if the Varians were willing to burn entire cities to capture her, then whatever secret she held mattered more than he could imagine. He looked at her again. If we leave you, what happens? Her eyes darkened. Then they win. The sound of metal striking stone echoed from the ruins nearby. Varian infantry, armored and relentless, marched into view. Their glowing visors scanned the rubble as they spread out with mechanical precision. Contact! A soldier yelled, raising his rifle. The firefight erupted instantly. The crack of human rifles met the sharp energy blasts of the Varians. Beams of red light scorched the stone, while bullets punched through the sand and armor. 2 soldiers went down in the first volley, their bodies flung against the ruins. The others shouted, ducking for cover. Raylan grabbed the girl and pulled her behind a broken pillar. Stay down! But she didn't cower. Her hands pressed against the pillar's surface, her eyes closing. The faint glow within them brightened, and for a second the air around her seemed to hum. The ground beneath Raylan's boots trembled. What are you doing? He demanded. Her eyes snapped open, and the glow dimmed again. She shook her head. Not here, not yet. The soldiers were being pushed back. The Varians advanced step by step, their fire cutting through the ruins with merciless precision. Fall back! Raylan ordered. They moved through the rubble, dragging their wounded, firing to cover each step. The girl kept pace silently, her eyes darting between the enemy and the sky. Above them, Bavarian ships circled, waiting to cut off their escape. At last, they reached the shattered remains of a transport ship hidden under the sands. Its hull was scarred and half buried, but the engine still thrummed faintly. Raylan had ordered it stationed here days ago, a precaution he now thanked himself for. Inside, he shouted. The soldiers piled in, dragging the wounded aboard. Raylan pushed the girl through the hatch last, then slammed it shut. "Lift us out." The engines roared to life, shaking the sand loose as the ship lurched upward. Beams of red fire followed them, striking the hull, but the shields held barely. The craft surged into the sky, leaving the ruins behind. Inside, the soldiers sat breathless, their faces pale and shaken. 2 wounded groaned as medics worked frantically. The girl sat silently, her hands folded tightly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Raylan stood before her, his armor scorched, his breath heavy. "Now you tell me," he said firmly. "What are you, and what do the Varians want with you?" The girl lifted her eyes slowly, and for the first time her voice cracked. "I am their fear. I am their enemy. And I am the daughter of the only one they could never break." Raylan froze. The words hung in the air like a blade. "Your mother," he said carefully. "Who is she?" The girl's lips parted, and in that whisper-soft voice, she spoke a name the galaxy had not heard in years. "She is the reason they still fight. She is the fury they fear, and she will come for me." The cabin went silent. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. They didn't understand the meaning, not fully, but Raylan did. If this girl was telling the truth, then humanity was no longer fighting alone. Something older, something stronger, was about to rise. Asterisk shuddered as it broke free of the desert winds and rose higher into the skies. The soldiers strapped themselves in, their armor scratched and stained from the firefight. Every man and woman inside carried the same look, fear mixed with disbelief. They had faced the Varians many times before, but never like this. Never had the enemy risked so much for a single target, and now that target sat quietly in the middle of the cabin. The girl's presence unsettled them. She was young, her face soft, yet there was a weight in her eyes that no child should bear. She sat still, her hands folded tightly, her gaze fixed on nothing. The glow that had flickered inside her earlier was gone, hidden once more. Captain Raylan leaned against the bulkhead, watching her. His soldiers muttered among themselves. Words like danger, trap, and alien cut through the air, though none spoke loud enough for her to hear. At last, Raylan stepped forward. He crouched in front of her, his helmet set aside so she could see his face. "You said the Varians fear you," he said, "and that your mother is coming. I need you to tell me the truth. Who are you?" The girl hesitated. Her lips trembled, and for a long moment it seemed she might stay silent. Then she whispered, "My name is Alira." The name carried no weight to the soldiers, but the way she spoke it, soft, burdened, made them fall quiet. Raylan nodded. "Alira, tell me why the Varians would burn entire cities for you." Her eyes lifted to his. They were dark, yet within them glowed faint specks like stars. "Because I carry what they could not destroy. My mother's gift, her fury. It lives inside me." The cabin fell silent. The soldiers stared, not understanding. Raylan kept his voice calm. "Your mother, who is she?" Alira's chest rose, and fell as though she carried mountains within her lungs. Her voice was low, trembling yet sharp. "My mother was the one who stood against them when no one else could. The one they could not bend, the one they fear even now. They call her the Fury of the Stars." Several soldiers exchanged nervous glances. They had heard whispers of that name in old reports, half-forgotten stories passed along among soldiers in dim barracks. A warrior who had stood against the Varians years ago, vanishing after battles that left entire fleets broken. But most believed it was myth, a tale told to keep morale alive. Ryland's jaw tightened. You're saying she's real, and that you're her daughter. Illyra nodded slowly. The soldiers muttered again, voices hushed but sharp. Impossible. A trap. She's lying. But then the ship rocked as another blast struck its shields. The Varian craft were still chasing, closing in through the upper atmosphere. The pilot shouted from the cockpit, "They're gaining on us." Ryland stood, his eyes fixed on Illyra. "If what you say is true, then prove it. Show us." Illyra's hands shook as she looked down at them. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she closed her eyes. The cabin grew still. The humming began again, soft and low, like the pulse of the earth itself. The metal floor trembled beneath their boots. The air thickened, humming with invisible energy. When Illyra opened her eyes, they glowed brighter than before, shining like molten stars. The soldiers froze, weapons lowered, hands trembled. One muttered a prayer under his breath. Illyra's voice was not loud, but it filled the cabin as though it came from every direction at once. "What my mother gave me is not mine to use lightly. But if I do not, you will not survive." The ship lurched as another blast shook its hull. Panels sparked, alarms screamed. The pilot yelled again, shields failing. Illyra rose to her feet, her glow pulsing stronger. She walked to the center of the cabin and spread her hands. The soldiers instinctively pulled back, their eyes wide. The glow leapt from her palms, streaks of silver light threading across the air like veins of fire. It seeped into the ship itself, crawling along the walls and across the controls. The engines roared louder, stronger. The alarms stopped. The shield indicator flared bright green. The pilot gasped. The systems, what did she just? Ryland stared, his breath caught in his throat. He had seen many weapons, many machines, but never this. This was not technology. This was something deeper. Something alive. Illyra's voice quivered as she spoke, her glow flickering with strain. "This is why they hunt me. Because what I carry cannot be destroyed, only passed on. My mother's power bound to me. If they take me, they take it. If they kill me, it awakens again. They cannot win while I live." The cabin was silent, except for the roar of the engines. Every soldier stared at her with fear, awe, and confusion. Raylan's voice was low, steady. "And if they find your mother?" Illyra's eyes dimmed slightly as she lowered her hands. "Then the war ends, for one side or the other." The glow faded, leaving only the trembling girl standing in the cabin. She sank back into her seat, her face pale, her body trembling with exhaustion. The ship surged forward, faster than before, leaving the Varian craft behind. For now they were safe. But the silence that filled the cabin was heavier than any battle, because every soldier now understood they were carrying more than a girl. They were carrying the future of the war itself, and outside, somewhere among the stars, her mother waited. The ship soared through the upper atmosphere, its engines pulsing with strange silver light. The soldiers sat in silence, their eyes flicking between the glowing panels and the girl who had made it possible. Illyra leaned against the wall, pale and exhausted, her breathing shallow. Whatever she had done to the ship had drained her. Captain Ryland studied her carefully. He had fought many battles, had seen machines crumble and men break, but nothing compared to this. She was just a child, yet the power inside her carried more weight than fleets of warships. It terrified him. It terrified them all. The pilot's voice broke the silence. "Captain, we're clear of pursuit. No Varian craft on our scanners." A wave of relief passed through the cabin, but it didn't last. Everyone knew the Varians would not stop. They never did. Ryland crouched beside Illyra. "Rest," he said quietly. "But when you wake, you will tell me everything. No more half-truths." Illyra looked at him with weary eyes, but she nodded. When the time comes We'll see her, Rylan frowned. See who? Her lips curled into a faint, almost sad smile. My mother. The words sent a chill down his spine. Hours later, the ship touched down at a hidden human outpost carved into a canyon of red stone. Soldiers moved quickly to secure the area, unloading the wounded and refueling the craft. Raylan led Illyra through the narrow tunnels, their footsteps echoing off the walls. The base commander, a grizzled veteran with a scar across his face, eyed Illyra with suspicion. You brought her here? After what happened at the ruins? Do you know what kind of fire you've brought into our hold? Raylan's voice was steady. She's not our enemy. The commander's glare shifted to Illyra. Then prove it. Illyra stood silently, her hands folded in front of her. She looked fragile in the dim light, like a child lost in war, but her eyes carried a depth that silenced even the commander. After a long moment, he turned away with a grunt. Keep her out of sight. If the Varians track her here, this base won't last an hour. Rylan led her deeper inside, where the air was cool and quiet. He guided her to a small chamber and gestured for her to rest. But as he turned to leave, Illyra spoke. They will come soon, not because of me, because of her. Raylan turned back, his eyes narrowing. Your mother. Illyra nodded slowly. She is near, I feel her. Before Rylan could reply, the ground trembled. Distant alarms wailed through the tunnels. Soldiers shouted orders, boots pounding against stone. Raylan rushed out of the chamber, grabbing his helmet. Report, he barked. A soldier skidded around the corner, breathless. Varian fleet dropping from orbit. Dozens of ships. Rylan's blood ran cold. They had been found. The commander stormed past, shouting orders. All units to positions, shields up. Prepare to repel ground assault. But as the soldiers scrambled, something else happened. The sky above the canyon lit up not with fire, but with light. A streak of silver cut through the clouds, brighter than any star. The soldiers paused, staring upward. The streak descended, growing larger, until it struck the ground outside the canyon with a thunderous crash. The earth shook. Dust billowed into the sky. Silence followed Dot, and then she appeared, from the dust. Rose a figure, tall and terrible, wrapped in armor that gleamed like living metal. Her hair flowed like black fire, her eyes burning with silver light. Every step she took cracked the stone beneath her boots. The air itself seemed to bend around her, heavy with power. The soldiers froze, fear and awe locking their limbs. Rylan stared, his chest tight. He had never seen her before, yet he knew instantly who she was. The fury of the stars. Illyra's mother. Her gaze swept the canyon, sharp and unyielding. When it fell on the outpost, every man felt as though she saw through them, down to their very bones. Rylan whispered under his breath, God help us. Illyra emerged from the chamber, drawn by the presence outside. Her voice cracked as she whispered, Mother. The woman's burning eyes softened for the first time. She raised her hand slightly, not in command, but in recognition. Illyra. The soldiers watched, unable to believe what they were seeing. The stories had been true. She had returned, but the moment did not last. From the sky above, Varian ships screamed down, their weapons glowing red. The fury turned her gaze upward, and her voice rang out like thunder. They dare follow me. She raised her arms. Light burst from her body, silver flames twisting into the sky. The Varian ships opened fire, beams of energy tearing through the clouds. But the light met them, bending, breaking, burning them from the sky. One by one, their black hulls shattered, falling like broken meteors into the desert. The soldiers shouted in disbelief, their voices rising above the roar. For the first time in years, they watched the Varians fall back. Illyra stood at the edge of the canyon, tears streaming down her face. she whispered softly. They will never stop hunting us. Not until one side is gone. Rylan looked at her, then at her mother. And he knew the war had changed forever. The canyon was silent after the battle. Smoke drifted from the wreckage of fallen Varian ships scattered across the desert. The ground still glowed faintly where the Fury's power had struck, cracks running like veins of fire across the stone. Soldiers stood frozen, weapons lowered, their eyes wide with disbelief. For years they had fought the Varians, barely surviving each battle. Now they had seen a single woman tear apart an entire fleet as though it were nothing. She stood tall among the dust, her armor pulsing with faint silver light. Her gaze was sharp, but not wild. There was control in her, yet beneath it burned a fury that could not be contained. When she turned toward the outpost, the soldiers instinctively stepped back. Even hardened veterans felt their hearts tremble. Illyra moved closer, her small frame dwarfed by the sight of her mother. "You came," she whispered. The Fury looked down at her daughter, and for the first time her stern face softened. "I will always come for you." Her voice was calm, deep, and it carried across the canyon like an oath. Captain Rylan approached carefully, his helmet tucked under his arm. Every instinct told him to fear this woman, but another voice whispered that she was no enemy. "You saved us," he said. The Fury's eyes shifted to him, and for a moment it felt as though she could see his every thought. "I saved her," she corrected, nodding toward Illyra. "Your survival was only a consequence." Her words stung, yet they carried no malice. Only truth. The base commander stepped forward, his jaw tight. "You brought danger to us," he snapped. "If the Varians follow you here again, this outpost will burn. What are we to you, shields, pawns?" The Fury's gaze snapped to him, and in an instant he fell silent. Her voice rose, low but edged with steel. "You are what you have always been. Defiant, stubborn, human. That is why they cannot break you. That is why I am here." Murmurs rippled through the soldiers. Some nodded, hope stirring in their chests. Others frowned, suspicion in their eyes. She was powerful, yes, but power alone did not make her ally. Rylan took a step closer. "You said you're here for her. But what about us? What about this war?" The Fury's eyes narrowed. "This war began long before you. The Varians are not your true enemy. They are hunters, tools of something greater. They destroy what they fear, and they fear what cannot be controlled. That is why they seek me. That is why they seek her." Illyra's voice was soft but steady. "They will never stop, Mother. Not while I live. Not while you live." The Fury looked at her daughter, sorrow flickering across her face. "Then we do not run, we fight." The commander barked a laugh, sharp and bitter. "Fight? You think we haven't tried? We've lost worlds, we've buried millions. Humanity is bleeding, and still they come. What makes you think it will be different now?" The Fury turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across every soldier in the canyon. "Because now you have me." Her words were not shouted, yet they struck harder than any speech. For the first time, the soldiers felt something stir inside them, a fire they had almost forgotten. Hope. But hope came with fear. Rylan knew what the commander feared, what many of them feared. If they followed her, if they placed their trust in this woman and her daughter, humanity would be bound to them. And if they lost, they would lose everything. That night, a council was held in the outpost's main chamber. Officers, soldiers, and survivors gathered around the long table. The air was tense, filled with whispers and doubt. At the head of the chamber stood the Fury, her daughter at her side. Raylan remained near, watching closely. The commander spoke first. "We cannot risk this. If she stays, the Varians will come in numbers we cannot withstand. Better to send her away, far from here." Illyra flinched, but her mother's hand rested gently on her shoulder. Rylan stood Send her away, and you hand her to the Varians. They'll find her. They always find what they hunt. And when they do, we'll face them alone." The room fell silent. The Fury's eyes glowed faintly as she spoke. "You must choose. Stand with me, and the Varians will bring their fury against you. But with me, you will stand a chance. Without me, you will fall as you have always fallen alone, one world at a time." Her words echoed in the chamber. The choice was clear, yet heavy. No one spoke for several breaths. Then one soldier, young and scarred, stepped forward. "I lost my brother on Calrus. I lost my home on Elion. If this woman can make them pay, then I'll follow her." Others murmured agreement. Some stood, nodding firmly. A few remained silent, fear in their eyes. But slowly, one by one, voices rose. Ryland's voice cut through them all. "Humanity has always fought with what little we had. We fought when we were outnumbered, when we were broken, when no one believed we could stand. Maybe this is madness. But maybe this is what we've been waiting for. I say we stand with her." The chamber erupted with shouts, some of support, some of protest. But the tide had shifted. Enough voices had spoken. Enough hearts had been moved. The Fury stood silent, watching, until at last she nodded. "Then it is decided. Humanity will stand with me. And I will unleash what the Varians fear most." Illyra looked up at her mother, her voice trembling. "And if that fury consumes you?" The Fury turned to her daughter, her eyes soft yet unyielding. "Then you will be what remains." The words silenced the chamber, leaving only the sound of distant winds against the canyon walls. Humanity had made its choice. The desert night burned with fire. Above the canyon, the stars vanished behind the descending Varian fleet. Dozens of warships filled the sky, their black hulls glowing with crimson lines. The earth shook as their weapons charged, preparing to erase everything below. Inside the canyon, humanity braced for its final stand. Soldiers lined the walls, weapons ready. Artillery hummed, shields flickered to life. But even the strongest defenses felt like paper before the storm descending from orbit. In the center of it all stood the Fury and her daughter. The glow from their bodies pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat before battle. Captain Ryland moved among his soldiers, steadying their nerves, reminding them that they were not alone. For the first time in this war, they were not the only line of defense. The commander's voice crackled across the comms. "Incoming barrage, brace!" The sky split open. Beams of red fire rained down, tearing into the canyon walls, shattering. Stone collapsing towers. Shields screamed under the pressure, flickering wildly. Soldiers were thrown from their posts, the ground heaving like a living beast. "Hold!" Ryland shouted. The Fury raised her arms. Silver light burst from her body, spreading like wings of fire across the canyon. The beams struck the light and shattered. The explosions rippled harmlessly across the desert, throwing sand into the air but leaving the outpost standing. Gasps echoed from the soldiers. For the first time, Varian weapons had failed. The Fury's voice boomed, calm and terrible. "They cannot break what was never theirs to command." But even as she spoke, more ships descended, their engines screaming. Drop pods fell like burning stars, striking the canyon floor. The doors burst open, and Varian infantry poured out, towering soldiers in black armor, their glowing visors cutting through the dust. The canyon erupted into chaos. Human soldiers fired in disciplined bursts, bullets and plasma ripping into the advancing enemy. Explosions shook the ground as artillery struck, tearing apart squads of Varians. But still they came, relentless, endless. Ryland led the charge, his rifle blazing, his voice hoarse with commands. "Hold the line, don't give them an inch." The Fury moved like a storm, her armor glowing brighter with every strike. Her fists unleashed waves of silver fire, tearing through Varian squads as though they were made of glass. She was Fury. made flesh, unstoppable, unbreakable. But Rylan saw what others did not. Each strike took something from her. Each burst of light dimmed her glow. The power inside her was vast, but it was burning her alive. Alira stood at the canyon's edge, her hands trembling. She felt it, her mother's strength unraveling, her fury consuming itself. Tears streaked her face as she whispered, "She can't hold it forever." Rylan fought his way to her side. "Then what do we do?" Alira looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly. "She gave me the same power, but mine is not fury, mine is balance." Before Rylan could answer, the ground shook violently. A massive Varian war machine, towering like a walking fortress, stomped into the canyon. Its cannons glowed red, charging to fire. The soldiers faltered, fear gripping their hearts. The Fury faced it, her body trembling, her glow flickering. She raised her arms once more. "Mother, no," Alira cried. She ran forward, placing herself between the machine and her mother. Her small figure glowed brighter, silver light pulsing from her chest. She spread her hands, and the air hummed. With harmony, not rage, the cannons fired. The blast never reached them. Illyra's light met the red fire, and for the first time, it did not shatter, it absorbed. The energy rippled through her body, then burst outward, returning to the machine in a wave of silver fire. The towering beast staggered, cracked, and fell with a deafening crash. Silence followed for a heartbeat. Then the Fury's voice, soft but steady, filled the air. "So it is true. You are not my fury, you are my hope." Alira turned to her mother, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "And hope is stronger than rage." The soldiers around them cheered, their voices rising above the chaos. With renewed strength, they surged forward, pushing the Varians back step by step. Artillery thundered, rifles blazed, and humanity fought not with desperation, but with defiance. The Fury and her daughter fought side by side, one wielding fury, the other balance. Together their power twisted through the canyon, tearing apart the Varian lines. Ships fell from the sky, infantry crumbled, and the fleet above faltered. At last, the Varians broke. What had once been a storm became retreat. Their ships pulled back, fleeing into the dark sky, leaving behind the wreckage of their failure. The canyon fell silent, broken only by the crackle of fire and the cheers of survivors. Humanity had stood. Humanity had won. The Fury sank to her knees, her glow fading. Alira rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. For the first time, the woman looked fragile, her strength drained. She placed a trembling hand on her daughter's cheek. "You carry what I could not," she whispered. "You will lead where my fury cannot." Alira's tears fell onto her mother's hand. "I will not lead alone. Humanity stood with us. Together we will end this war." The Fury smiled faintly, her burning eyes soft at last. "Then perhaps there is a future." Rylan stepped forward, his armor scorched, his voice hoarse. He looked at the girl, at the soldiers cheering in the ruins, at the woman who had given everything. His words were steady, firm. "Humanity will not kneel. Not to the Varians, not to fear. We will fight with you until the stars themselves burn out." The canyon echoed with cheers, louder than thunder, carrying into the endless night. And so the war had changed. No longer was it humanity against the dark. It was fury and hope, mother and daughter, united with humankind. Together, they would defy the Varians. Together, they would survive. Asterisk.